Here's an image that suffers from a very common problem. What happened when the photograph was taken? The exposure was set for the sky. Notice that the gray sky is nicely exposed, but at the same time it's caused the shadow detail to be lost in the foreground. What we're going to do is we're going to restore not just the detail, but we're going to restore the color into the foreground. Now this seems like a very difficult thing to do. In fact, some people might even say this image is a write-off, but it's far from a write-off because one of the most impressive new features in Photoshop CS is called the shadow highlight filter. And this filter alone is worth the price of the upgrade. Let's have a look at it. It's under the Image Adjustments, Shadow Highlight. And there the filter is right there at the default setting. We can click the Show More Options off, and this is probably how it's going to look the first time you open it. And notice right now we're working on the shadows, and it's set at 50%, and see the effect it's had already without even doing anything. Let's turn the preview off. There was the image before, and there is the image after. If we increase the amount, that will brighten it up even more. If we decrease the amount, obviously it's not going to have as much effect. But let's have a look at some of the other options. There's two more options. There's the tonal width and the radius. What the tonal width does is this will set which range is going to be affected. In other words, if I turn this down, only the deepest shadows are being affected by the filter. As I increase it, it's now moving into the midtones, and the midtones are being affected. So now this filter is applied not only to the darkest shadows, but to the lightest shadows and the mids. Now the radius, what this does is it tells Photoshop which pixel neighborhood one of these pixels is in. What that means is that it's telling Photoshop whether or not it's a shadow or it's a highlight, because when we move the shadows, we only want to affect that range. So as we increase the radius, it will cause Photoshop to look a little further out than we would if we go here. This will give a much more narrow focus. So let's increase the amount a little bit more. And let's increase the tonal width a bit more. And look at that image. See how much the detail is back in there. Most of the detail is in fact restored in that image. It's very incredible. Then there's a couple more settings here. There's the adjustments. There's a color correction and a mid-tone contrast. Basically what the color correction does is if you increase it, you'll see it just increases the saturation. As you decrease it, it decreases the saturation. Because the saturation will be pretty messed up in an image like that with so little of the detail in there. So if we set it here, that's a good setting. And then if you look at the contrast, that just decreases or increases the contrast. So if we set it there, click OK, and there's our image. Now if we want to compare it before and after, let's undo it. There's before and there's after.